Okay, with the school board special meeting on Wednesday, March 15th, come to order, please. Mr. Blanco, would you please lead us in a prayer, pledge of allegiance?
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessing tonight on our two candidates and on our board. Please give them confidence, wisdom, and guidance as we go through this process. Please guide them with safety on the trip home after tonight's meeting. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, any additions or deletions to the agenda? None? Okay, I will begin the interviews. Okay, at this time, we have two applicants, Dr. Shirley Thibodeau and Mr. Frederick Wills. The first applicant to be interviewed will be Dr. Shirley Thibodeau, and Mr. Frederick, you will be sequestered in the background. The way this procedure will be handled, I will be asking 6 questions. The person being interviewed will have 5 minutes for an opening. I will ask 6 questions. The board will be allowed to ask any question they have concerning the question that was asked. after each question is asked. And then there will be 5 minutes for closing. All right, any questions before we start?
And no question about these things.
No, no, sir. Yes, ma'am, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Mr. President, I'll excuse myself at this time.
You are excused. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Mr. Boyer, I'm extremely honored and humbled to be standing before you. I am Dr. Shirley Thibodeau, and I am the daughter of John Thibodeau Jr. and Mary Joyce Thibodeau. I am one of 9 siblings who grew up off of Grand Point Road in a 2-bedroom frame house. My loving parents gave us all the following advice. Always put God first, because everything that happens in your life has to first go through God. My dad used to say, not all money is good money. Work for what you want, because not all money is good money. If you have to steal for it, lie for it, break the law for it, or cheat for it, then it isn't good money. It is only good money if you work for it. Number 3, keep your word. My dad would say a man can have 2 pockets full of money and still be broke if that man does not have a word. People need to know that they could depend on you and take you at your word. Number 4, never use your circumstances as an excuse. Yes, you may have only 1 pair of shoes, but the next person may not have feet. And the last one got me in trouble with my catechism teacher, Commandment 11. Fais pas rien que tu peux. My mother's translation, don't do it just because you can. In 1973, at the age of 8, I started peeling crawfish alongside my mother at Bonanza for Harris and Lorraine LeBlanc. I graduated from Beaubridge High School in 1983 and decided to go on to USL. Money was short. I was short about $300. My mother took me to Farmers Merchant Bank and she co-signed the $300. As we were walking out the bank, I could see my mother's eyes welling up with tears. And she grabbed me by the hand and she said in French, Mon petit, prends courage. Bon Dieu t'apprécie toi fini. My child, have courage. God will let you finish. I started at USL in August of 1983 at the age of 18. My entire time at USL for the next 4 years, I had 2 part-time jobs. I peeled crawfish on Saturday at Bayou Lane, Bonanza, Chavalaya, and Lionel, wherever they had crawfish, Last, Pat. And during the week while I was at UL, I worked at the library. After I graduated in December of 1988 at the age of 22, I had no prospects because my first degree was in general studies. My parents asked me, so what are you going to do? I said, well, I need money. I don't have a car. I'm going to go back to peeling crawfish. I went back to Bonanza. I walked into the crawfish plant. Someone from the rear of the plant said this. I didn't realize you needed a college degree from USL to peel crawfish. My head fell. My shoulders slumped. Later that evening, as my mother was massaging my hand, because my mother always believed that people could tell your story by your hands. So she would massage my hands with her little concoction, a cap of bleach, a cap of dishwashing liquid, and warm water to get your hands ready for the next day. She said, I saw what happened today. I said, Mom, do you know who said it? She said, yes, but you don't need to know. She said, never walk with your head down. You're not stealing. You're not standing in a corner, and you have nothing to be ashamed about. And she said, I give you my word that you will not always be in the place where you are. My father saw that I was growing discouraged, told me that a good friend of his said, call my son-in-law. My son-in-law is going to give your daughter a chance. My father's friend was Mr. Lester Roberts. His father-in-law was Mr. Roland J. Chevalier. Before I called Mr. Chevalier, I turned to my dad. My dad was 6'5". I said, Pop, I'm kind of scared to call. I'm not certified. And what if he tells me no? My dad leaned forward and said, Meshach, you've heard the word no before. Did I have to bring you to the hospital? Did we have to call paramedic to correct your body? He said, do what you got to do. 2 weeks later, Mr. John Beasley gave me a call and he gave me my first break. I started as a non-certified teacher and I didn't own a car. My dad would drop me off in front of the gym, and in the afternoons on nice days like today, I would walk until I got to A Bears on Grand Park Road, where the sibling would pick me up. Because I wasn't certified, the district required that you take 6 hours per year to maintain your job. When I had enough money, I would take 12 hours a year. And in 1994, I earned my second degree from UL as a certified teacher. I packed all my pencils and my loose leaf and I said I was done with school. You could put a fork in me. In 2010, I returned to UL for the third time. My principal at the time, Ms. Frederick, came to me and she said, I have a leadership class and I want you to participate. I said, Ms. Frederick, this is my 22nd year. And I said, if you be quiet enough, you can hear the retirement train coming. I said, I'm not ready to go back to school. But my former elementary teacher, Mr. Ron LeBlanc, encouraged that I should, and so I did. I started working on my master's degree. And in August of 2013, in July of 2013, I graduated with my master's degree from UL. A year before I graduated, one of my professors said, I really think you should apply for the doctorate program. And so I applied, I got accepted, and I went on to start working a semester after I finished my master's program. I started working on my doctorate program. After spending 24 years in the classroom as a special ed teacher at Bowbridge Junior High, I became the assistant principal at Clarks Middle. In December of 2013, I was asked to go to JCEP, and I served as the administrator there. And I also, in 2015, I went on to become the assistant principal at Bowbridge High School. In September of 2015, I became the pre-K supervisor and now serve as a middle school supervisor. In 2020, on the behest of my best friend from high school, I published my first book titled Words of Wisdom to Help Navigate Through the Many Seasons of Life, a mother's gift to her daughter. I donated every dime from that book to 7 2021 graduates of Bowbridge High School. And I asked 5 things in return from them. 1, always put God first. Because everything that happens in our lives has to first go through God. 2, listen to your parents. They were here first and they're smarter than you. 3, respect yourself, love yourself, but also extend that to your fellow man. Never place too much emphasis on money or things because the joy it brings you is only temporary. And number 5, stay focused. Life will offer you many distractions and obstacles, but you gotta stay focused. In September 2022, an executive board of 13 members named me the vice president of the Louisiana School Supervisors Association, where I'm able to collaborate with supervisors from throughout the state to provide teachers with support. I have never been married, and nor do I have any children, but I am engaged to Eddie Wills of Parks, Louisiana. Eddie retired from the Navy Reserve after 24 years of service, and he's currently in his 35th year with the Lafayette Consolidated Government. This is my story. And again, I am humbled and I'm honored to be standing in front of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll begin to ask the questions. Question number 1, what is your vision for the St. Martin Parish school system and your plans for moving it forward?
My vision for the St. Martin Parish school system is that all students, we currently have 7,228 students in our district. My vision for all students in this district, that every single student is afforded ample opportunities to succeed. Because we know that when our students are successful, our communities are stronger. My vision also for every teacher in this district is that every teacher is given the adequate support so that they could be successful, and that both teachers and principals can have a voice when decisions are made regarding curriculum. and also to make sure that every parent knows exactly what we're doing and the efforts that we're making to make sure their students are successful. If you look at some of the things I mentioned in the PowerPoint that I gave you, I wasn't sure if we're going to use the PowerPoint. I mentioned my vision for student success and for giving teachers support. For improving student achievement, if you look at page 27 in your handbook, I would like to examine the last 10 years of LEAP data to identify the trends, evaluate current instructional support materials. If you go to our website and you click on the curriculum and instruction handbook, the resources that we have available start on page 42 and it ends on page 47. 5 pages. We have contracts or agreements with over 44 companies. I don't feel that all of that is necessary, so I would definitely like to evaluate to see which programs are working to make sure that our students are successful. Based on the evaluation of instructional supports, I would adjust those materials accordingly, provide teachers with adequate professional development, and yes, incorporate field trips geared towards post-high school. If I, as a supervisor, can travel out of state or travel to Baton Rouge for a conference, I feel that it's only fair that students and teachers are afforded the same opportunity. I don't think that a teacher should have to submit a lesson plan to go to take her kids to a museum or to the zoo. And that is my vision for improving student achievement.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, question number 2. How do you plan to increase academic achievement levels and our school performance scores?
When you look at, if you go to page, it might be page 5 in your page 6. When you look at our rankings among school districts in the Acadiana area, we're at a 68.2. This is on page 6. We have lost 21 points in the last 4 years. When you look at page 7, which is the next page, we went from 2 CRR schools, which is comprehensive intervention required. This is basically saying that these schools need critical support. We went from 2 schools to 5, okay? So my goal for that is basically having teachers have more of a voice. What I'm finding is, I named some of the problems that we have. If you go to page 12, some of the problems we have, too many curriculum changes as it pertains to instruction and done with very little teacher input. Our teachers are in the trenches and so are our principals, so they should have a voice. So my solution for that would be to form a small group of teachers and determine which instructional platform would be the best based on data. We know that we have to utilize a tier 1 curriculum, but we need to look at what works best for our kids. Another problem I noted is on page 13. Once the curriculum has been decided upon, it is often done in late May or June. So that places your teachers at a disadvantage. Miss Edna's gonna buy me a brand new boat. She doesn't know it yet, but she's gonna buy me a brand new boat. I'm gonna put it in the middle of the basin, but I have no rod, no reel, no bait. When I get back, Miss Edna's asking me, well, where's the fish? I can't catch fish. Yes, you gave me a new boat, but I don't have the means. So we give our teachers a whole lot of things, but they don't have the means because it's done so late. So the solution for that would be deciding in December and setting timetables for professional development for our teachers. Problem number 3, because those curriculum decisions are done so late, it places pressure on our print shop. It was never about Mr. Zach. You can't copy what you don't get. So I would basically make sure that the person who's responsible for getting those copies to the print shop, that they do it at the end of March of that school year, like now, to get them ready for the upcoming school year. Another problem we had the ESSA funds. And some of those ESSA funds we use to get master teachers on the campus and literacy coach. So each K-8 school has a master teacher on site to provide support to teachers, and their role is to model lessons, help with pacing and guidance and scoping sequence. how can I serve as a master teacher and I had only 40% proficient? Okay, I tested 100 kids and only 40% of my kids, only 40 of my kids passed. I don't know about you, but if I walked into a doctor's office and he told me that his surgery rate is 40% correct, I can't exactly quote Mr. Forte. I don't care how much butter you put on the mouth. But if that doctor told me my surgeries are only 40% correct half of the time, I am not going out of that office. I'm sorry. So I think you place people at a disadvantage. You just can't place someone in a position because you feel that they're deserving of it. You place people who you know who have proven to be successful to serve as your master teacher. Problem number 5 on page 16, we have the assessment guide. The LDOE has it on their website, and it tells teachers what the priority standards are. This is what you should be focusing on. But very little conversations are given to an assessment guide. So my point to ponder is, Muhammad Ali said it best, a man who views the world the same at 50 as he did as 20, he has wasted 30 years of his life. So we have to make the necessary changes in curriculum. I think, Mr. Forte, I went a little too long, but that's okay.
All right. Okay, any questions from the board?
Yeah, I'm gonna let her finish. I have a question to ask.
All right, will you finish?
Yes, sir.
Who's finished?
Okay, I would like to ask you, Dr. Thibodeau, to you explain what you think is the main job of a superintendent.
The main job of the superintendent is to make sure that our students are successful, that our students are given an opportunity to succeed, and that people are held accountable. You have to hold people accountable. I think that's very important. You have to provide a high quality education to all of the students. We currently have 7,228 students in our district. In December, the Test News put out an article showing the number of students we had lost. In that article in December, we had 7,226 students. Since the article was published, we picked up only 2 students, providing students with a variety of interests and opportunities to learn. Our kids should be afforded an opportunity to go on field trips. I think those experiences are needed. Provide teachers with the necessary materials and professional learning to support student access. Right now, many of you who have taught, when I've been taught in the classroom, I had a lesson plan. And my lesson plan was mapped out for the week. Now, right now, a lesson plan for many of our teachers for 1 hour of instruction is 5 pages long, annotated lesson plans. If I became superintendent, I would get a shredder and I would shred them. Because a good teacher knows what her or his students need. I taught for 24 years. I did not need a 5-page lesson plan for an hour of instruction. And you don't need 5 pages of lesson plan to teach a child how to read. Put a book in a child's hand. So that's my thoughts on what a superintendent needs to do. Building bridges with parents and community leaders. I can tell you that since I've been a supervisor, parents have called me, and this is the binder that I've used. You're welcome to look at it. Every call that I've received from a parent since I've been a supervisor is in there. I had a mother who emailed me on November 30th at 2:14 a.m. No, I was not up and I did not answer the email. But when I got to the office the next morning, I called the mom. She said, "I'm so happy you called me." She said, "But it's only 6:15. I said, "But it was 2:14 when you sent me the email," which means you were restless. How can I help you? And that is the job as a supervisor, as a superintendent, to make yourself accessible and to know that people could take you at your word. Anyone could show up with a cheap suit. I'm wearing one tonight. I told Mr. Al, if it rains tonight and you see buttons and thread in the parking lot, please collect them because I'm wearing a cheap suit. But we know that when our children are successful, our communities are stronger. So we have to afford our students opportunities, and whenever a parent calls me, I log it in. Because when a mother comes to me, I think of my own mother. My mother wasn't educated, but I think of my own mother. So every situation that comes in, I listen to what a parent says, and I take a carpenter's approach to things. And there was a gentleman that used to come and do repairs at our house, Mr. Wilbert Solari. Some of you may remember Mr. T-Boy, worked at a Fred Mills place. And it always kind of puzzled me. Carpenters never have an eraser on their pencils. So I was curious. I asked him, I said, Mr. T-Boy, you don't have an eraser on your pencil? He said, baby, I got to measure twice and cut once. There's no room for error, because once you put the blade down, it's over. So I take a carpenter's approach to things. I look at things. Some people will tell you that I'm hard, and that I am, but I'm fair. I don't care if you're my sister. If you're not doing your job, guess what? I will give you a map of the building and tell you which exit you need to walk out of. And you have to hold people accountable. We are all professionals. You shouldn't have to remind people that they have to show up for work. You should be going to your schools. You should be answering calls. You should be returning calls. You have to hold people accountable.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from the board? All right, question number 3. What strategies would you employ to improve discipline in the classrooms and around our campuses?
You build relationships with your students. I spent 24 years in the classroom. One of the things that Mr. Beasley would require us to do as a first-year teacher, within 2 weeks, you had to call every child, the parent of every child in your homeroom class. You have to build relationships. I have been seeing the same doctor since I was about 26 years old. On January 5th of 2022, I went to the doctor. They slide the glass. The nurse hands me a paper. I go back to my seat, and it's a letter saying that the doctor's stepping down. I got a little emotional. I've been seeing him since I'm 26, and I'm almost 60. So when I finally get to the back, I said, Doc, I can't believe you're leaving me. You're the only man who stayed around this long. I can't believe you're leaving me. And I said, I've always respected the fact that you were always interested in my life. When my dad, was going through issues, my mom, he was always interested in my life. And he said, how can I help you if I don't know you? There was one student in all of my years that I could not help. I could never crack the code. I don't know what happened. I tried everything I could. The one time I tried to help the student, where you see the tape, this child did this with his teeth. He was the only child I was afraid of. When I see that boy coming through, I would shine like new money. He did this to my dress with his teeth because he was upset, and he was only 9 years old. The holes you see were done with his teeth. So you have to build relationships, but you also have to hold kids accountable. We have kids calling in bomb threats. I think that if a child does that, particularly in the high school, I don't think the child should be allowed to graduate and to walk with his class. Because look at the disruption you cause, and look at the resources you use. And provide our teachers with adequate training. But if you build relationships with your student, I'll give you another example. I was called to one school, and the child was running in the street. While I was there, I found out that the little boy's mom had died. She had dropped him off at school, never came back. She got in an accident. She had died. So the little boy was having a hard time. I was 42 years old when my mother died. It was Sunday, October 7th at 7 p.m., 2007. And when you lose your mother, it's a blow, because the world will turn its back on you. Your friends will run away, but your mother will love you no matter what. So I think it's important that you build relationships with your students and provide teachers with adequate support on how to handle those troubling students, but also holding students accountable. There's never an excuse for acting out in a classroom.
Okay, any rebuttal from the board member?
What is your greatest strength?
My greatest strength is that I'm consistent. I have strong work ethics. I'm firm and I'm fair. I've been in the district 34 years. I've been late to work one time. I could tell you when it was. It was the summer of 2001. It was summer school. And at the time, I was trying to subcontract my house. And my mother said you should have just done turnkey, but I like to save a quarter, because you might need it later. And so I would stay up really late at night getting bids, go to Lowe's early in the morning, look at ceiling fans, get bids on light fixtures. And one morning I overslept. When I picked up my phone, I had a few calls. Tib, are you okay? Are you alive? Are you dead? Because of the fact that I had never been late to work. Every single day, I give about 10 and a half hours here. I'm usually the first person in the building. This morning I got here before 6 o'clock. It must have been about 5:45. And I take my responsibility seriously, because it's not just about a job, but it's about how can you make things better for children, for teachers, for principals, for parents, and for your community. So those are my assets. I'm consistent, I have strong work ethics, I'm dependable, and my word is my word.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd like to ask,
Go ahead.
what are your plans to improve the instruction in the classroom?
The plan to improve the structure in the classroom is, I think once you give teachers a voice, and once you remove all of this annotation that teachers are required to do. I live near Beaubridge Elementary and Beaubridge Primary. I live behind Old Gates Pharmacy. There are times when I'm driving past on Saturdays and Sundays, teachers are there working on lesson plans. I think you have to give teachers support, but you also have to give teachers a voice. When you go to a restaurant, they give you a menu and you select what you want to eat, but no one brings you a plate of food and say, eat this. And a lot of times things are just shared to teachers. Here, you do it a month before school starts, and you better go do it well. I think once you give the teachers more flexibility, you respect their opinion because they know their children best. I really think our test scores are going to start to move in the right direction. I should not be making decisions as a supervisor for what a teacher or principal should be doing. I'm going in there to support them.
All right, anybody else? Okay, next question. What are your plans to strengthen school district and community relations?
You communicate with your parents. Like I showed you the binder, every parent that calls, I always return their call. You have informational meetings, you have open house, and you meet people where they are. You build a relationship with your parents, okay? And you keep your parents informed. I should not have to call a parent only when a child gets into trouble. I would apply the Mr. Beasley method. You call at the beginning of the school year, you go to confession afterwards, but you find something nice to say about the child. Because that way a parent is more willing to listen to you. But if you call a parent, if I were a parent and the only time I got a call from the school is when my little girl is cutting up, after a while I'm changing my number. Okay, so I think if you start those things early, you introduce yourself. I'm Dr. Thibodeau. I have Johnny in my 7th grade class this year. It's only the 3rd day of school, but he came in, his uniform was nicely tucked in. He had his pencil sharpened. We're going to have a good school year. So the next time I call you, Mr. Fouti, you're not as upset. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
All right, any questions from the board? All right, question number 5. What are your thoughts on magnet schools and what would you propose for our district?
Okay, magnet schools. If you go to page 19 in the handout I gave you, I know there were some visits to a few magnet schools, but these are the top 3 magnet schools in the state. The first one is Phoenix Elementary. It is the #1 elementary school in Rapides Parish. It is the #1 elementary school in the state, and it's also the #1 magnet school in the state. So I would take, and number 2, the second magnet school is Assad Highlands Elementary Magnet School in Caddo. If you look at the bottom, they were able to secure over $650,000 in grants. So I would definitely be reaching out to Ms. Heather Williams, who's the principal there, to find out what they're doing. And also the last magnet school is led by Dr. Robert Morris, Fairfield Magnet School. The first thing that I would do, we know we need to set up magnet schools in our district. I would get parents involved, community leaders involved, students. I would first go there to visit it first with several supervisors. I would set up a meeting, get us a bus, go there and spend a day there to see what's going on. Okay, once you get parent buy-in, once you get student buy-in, based on what they're providing their students there, I would want to model it after that. When you look at the first magnet school, Phoenix Magnet, look at what they're offering the kids. Art, technology, music, keyboarding, and foreign languages. When you look at the second magnet school, they're offering kids, they receive grants over $650,000. I know that at the January board meeting, I think we had approved the grant writer for $25,000. I would like to go visit there to see what they're doing, and they're offering their students computer lab, string instruments, art, drama. So I would go there, visit those schools, and try to model what they're doing there in our district. Because if we don't start to move our schools in the right direction, we're going to have to start competing with charter schools. I have a friend of mine who worked in the district almost 30 years, and now she's at a charter school in a neighboring parish, and she told me that next year, right now, there's a waiting list of 1,000 students, and next year, they're going to have 12 kindergarten classes. They're literally bursting at the seams. No one can come and set up a charter school now in our district because we're dealing with a DSEC order. But as soon as this is behind us, because this too shall pass, if someone comes in our district and sets up a charter school, we're in trouble. Because once you give parents a choice, they're going to take that choice. So I think it's important that what we do, we take our time, we get parents involved, students involved, teachers and principals. Decisions should not be made just by supervisors. Our teachers are in the trenches. Our principals are in the trenches. I served at JSEP for a while. I was getting a JSEP at 5:30 in the morning. Sometimes Miss Tammy Bennett was serving, she was serving as my personal escort because it was so dark. She was working at ELC at the time. So I think it's important that we get parental involvement, student involvement. We visit those magnet schools and possibly have some of the students from those magnet schools and teachers come and present before the board so that so those people who are not able to travel to Rapides Parish or to Shreveport can at least come in and listen to what's being offered. People are not going to buy in if you don't give them a chance to buy in or give them a chance to participate. A former teacher who worked at Beaubridge High School told me that in 1989, which is the year I started working, Mr. Ronnie Doré had a bunch of these overage kids. And I know because I had 7th graders who were 15 and a half. And she said that Mr. Doré took a group of teachers to a neighboring parish that had a GED program. And that's how he got buy-in. And that's how he modeled his GED program for these overage kids who were going to the high school. So you have to get buy-in from people. I think that's very important that you let everyone have a voice.
Any questions from the board? I have one. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Talking about the charter schools a while ago, as a superintendent, what steps will you take to compete with charter schools and scholarship programs to maintain our district enrollment?
What I would do is, once you would set up really good, solid magnet schools, and you provide kids with really good opportunities where they can succeed, and you give teachers more autonomy, you give principals more autonomy, I really think that we can move our test scores in the right direction. I think right now principals and teachers are just overworked. They have all of the paperwork that's coming through from curriculum. You have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. I think once you allow people to have a voice, and once you invite people to sit at the table, I think they're more likely to comply. And they're more likely to go the extra mile. Does that make sense, Mr. Dozier? Okay.
Anybody else?
Ms. Shirley,
Yes, ma'am.
let me ask you this, I'm not gonna worry you. How can you help principals that have a school with many discipline problems?
What we did many years ago under Mr. Laverne, I remember we had Mr. Ron LeBlanc. And Mr. Ron LeBlanc's only job was to provide support to principals. He would go from one school to the other, and he would provide them support. I think if you had someone who could spend that time, every supervisor right now in the district has one school they're assigned to. I'm actually working with 3 schools that I'm assigned to now. It's not that Mr. Al assigned me to those schools. I started with one. A principal requested me. Mr. Al came to me. He said, Dr. Tibb, I'm not forcing you to do it. If you say no, I'm gonna respect you. I said, Mr. Al, the principal is asking me, I'm gonna go. And on January 5th, I had another request from a principal. And so I took on a 3rd school. I think that if I would bring before the board a proposal where we could hire someone like a Mr. Ron LeBlanc, and his only job would be from going from school to school, especially we have a lot of new principals who are struggling with discipline and just trying to get a hand on things. But I think if you would have someone like Mr. Ron LeBlanc who could go in and provide them with support and making sure that supervisors are going to their schools regularly. One thing I would ask if I became superintendent is that every week we are required to submit weekly site support visits. I would have supervisors submit those reports to you as well for schools that fall within your district. So that way you would be informed. I believe in transparency. I don't think that a parent should have to tell you what's going on. You should know what's going on. I can't expect any one of you to give up your day jobs and spend a day at your schools, but if you got a report, a weekly report, you would know what's going on in the schools in your district. Okay?
I got a quick question on that. These magnet schools you have here, what is the age group?
The age group is pre-K, it's K to 5.
K to 5?
K to 5, and I give you the enrollment as well in that.
Well, that's fine, I just need to know what age group.
He's K to 5, and one of the magnet schools even offers a domino class. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right, question number 6. What are your thoughts and plans to involve more teachers in our district's classrooms?
Mhm.
And would those plans include the limiting of the number of supervisors?
I believe that as a supervisor, it is your responsibility to go to your school every week. There should be no excuse. I have 3 schools and I go every week. There are times I'm expecting bathrooms at Bovard Elementary at 6 in the morning. Once in DC, I get up at 4 o'clock, what you want? But I think that it's important that supervisors understand their role. You know, I don't think that you should at any time, you should have an excuse saying, well, I can't get to my school. I don't have time to get to my school. As far as, do I think there are too many supervisors? No, I don't think so. I think that we have a lot of issues at all of our schools, particularly at our middle schools. So I think that if supervisors went to their schools every week with fidelity and provide those schools with support and submit their weekly supports to you, I think that you all would be more inclined to understand their role. I don't know if I answered your question, Mr. Bolte. I tried to tiptoe around that one.
Yeah, you did that. You did all right. Any questions? Okay, you will have 5 minutes for your closing.
Okay, I'm dropping things here, Mr.
Not a
Fulton.
problem, not a problem.
But I thank you all for your patience. This is my closing. Okay, thank you. Yes, I say Pablo. I mentioned to you at the beginning about my parents, John Thibodeau and Mary Joyce Thibodeau, and the fact that I'm one of 9 children. I'm actually number 8. And according to my mother, I was the best one. If my siblings heard that, they would not be happy. I share with you about my parents. My dad died on Friday, June 2nd, 1995, at the age of 65, after a 6-month bout with cancer. My loving mother lived with me 4.5 years before she died. In 1946, at the age of 12, my mother was diagnosed with diabetes. And a year later, she was diagnosed with a heart condition, and she was told she probably wouldn't live past 20 and probably would never have children. We know how that finished. My mother died at the age of 73 on Sunday, October 7th, 2007 at 7 p.m. I shared with you that I'm one of 9 children. We are now 6. I've lost 3 siblings since 2019. The first to die was Wanda at 61 after a 2-year bout with breast cancer. 9 months later, the baby of the family, at 54, died on July 27th, 2020. And 7 months after he died, Clarence, 65, died on Sunday, February 6th at 3 a.m. as a result of suicide. I've had my share of sorrows and disappointments and grief. But the book of Job, chapter 14, reminds us all that man born of woman, days are short and filled with trouble. And because of this, I understand the brevity of life. We are all passing through. I am merely a servant. My very first course in the master's program, Dr. Paula Montgomery had us to give our thoughts on education and learning. And I share with you what I shared with her. I am passionate about aiding children to become academically and socially responsible. Our children are our future, and we serve as a compass to guide them through life. I understand that it's extremely challenging, but when we are able to successfully change one child, we change our communities. Yeah. My philosophy for learning is quite simple. Every child can learn, but not at the same time or at the same level. There is not an assembly line approach to educating the many young minds that arrive at the beginning of each school year. Despite the naysayers, all children aspire to do something great based on their definition of greatness. As educators, we must exhaust every possible avenue to ensure that all children are never denied the opportunity to produce greatness. Society waits in anticipation for the next great thinker or leader, and the goal of great teachers and leaders is to ensure that this is accomplished. And when this is achieved, we make the communities in which we reside a little stronger. We are a tough people. Don't mess with St. Martin Parish. In your handout, the last 3 pages was something I've been holding on to for 22 years. I was 36 years old when I laid my hand on this. I was at Cecilia Junior High. It was the last year that Mr. Robert Chagani served as a superintendent. And for 22 years, I kept this letter. I cannot tell you where my birth certificate is, mind you, or my social security card, but I kept this letter. It is the last 3. And Mr. Chevalier noted in his last newsletter about the tough times we were facing. When I started that year, they were not sure of how they were going to put our payroll. We were in the red. It was tough, but we made it. And I shared that with you. I have the original copy, but I made a copy so I could share with you. It was Mr. Chevalier's last newsletter called The Core. Mr. Chevalier would often say that every single day, our parents are entrusting us with their most prized possession, their children. Again, even if I had 1,000 tongues, I could never thank God enough for this opportunity, my parents, my family, and all the wonderful teachers who touched my life. Miss Joyce Angel, who was my first grade teacher. Miss Cynthia Gate, who was my advanced English teacher. Miss Nancy Dore, who was my science teacher. Miss Janelle Jolivet, Madame Marie Ambrose. Mr. Ron LeBlanc, who taught me elementary social studies. Miss Verna Narcisse, whom I talked to a couple of weeks ago and asked me if I was 70 years old. Anyone who knows Verna Narcisse? She said, Tim, you're still hanging in there. You must be about 70 now. But each and every one of those teachers touched my life. And I thank you so much for this opportunity, each and every one of you. And I hope that you select me. I won't hold it against you. Now, I will hold it against you if you make gumbo, you don't call me. Because I'm always riding with my gumbo bowl. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. What a wonderful opportunity. I wish my parents were here, but I feel their spirit. And it doesn't matter where you come from. I'm one of 9, 2-bedroom frame house. The road, 1010 Julie Bond Road. But I made it. I made it because my parents built a strong foundation, but I had teachers who believed in me. So I thank you so much. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. That's my documentation, Mr. Emmett. Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Merci. 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 Coach, oh, thank you so much. Mr. Coach. Merci, Mr. Coach. Merci. Merci. We like hands. I had siblings who were McAllister. Yeah, I just want to say thank y'all.
Yes, I did, I prepared. When you took the vote, I had it. You signed it off. I just feel super.
All right, Mr. Wills, thank you for coming. First of all, we're gonna give you 5 minutes, to open, and then, I'll ask you a series of questions. And the board will have, an opportunity to ask questions within those questions. And then we'll give you 5 minutes to close.
Okay, good evening. My name is Frederick Wills. As you know, I am employed by St. Mark Parish School Board. Began my career many years ago as a sixth grade teacher at Burbridge Elementary. From that point, I think I worked 5.5 years at Burbridge Elementary. Became behavior interventionist at the same school, worked as behavior interventionist because there was no assistant principal at that school for approximately 5 years. After those 5 years, I applied for and was recommended to become the assistant principal at St. Marville Junior High School. I worked under Miss Denise Frederick for approximately 2 years. In those 2 years, Ms. Denise Frederick decided she wanted to come back home. She transferred to Burbridge Junior High. I applied for the principalship at St. Marville Junior High and became principal in the 07-08 school year. In that particular summer, St. Marville Junior High was deemed a school of choice by the State Department because of our subgroups, low-performing subgroups. At that time, children had a choice, which is ironic that we're talking about this in this day and age. Students from St. Marville Junior High had a choice of going to either Catahoula or St. Parks Middle. We had a meeting prior to the start of school. It was, I believe, Mr. Laverne was the superintendent at the time. We had a meeting with several board members as well as parents, and we developed a plan, designed a plan, and talked about what we were going to do to bring the school back to its former status, encourage parents to keep their kids in the school. And I really can't even remember if we had 10 kids that left because there was transportation that was going to be provided, but it wasn't an issue because we didn't have that many students who transferred. After 2 years of work with the central office staff, our school was no longer a school of choice. So I think that was probably one of the biggest accomplishments I had there, is working to make sure that that school was no longer a school of choice. As you'll see later on, I'm going to talk about the issue we have with subgroups within our district right now and what we need to do to move forward. After 4 years as principal of St. Marville Junior High, I applied for and was recommended to be the supervisor of child welfare and attendance. During those 9 years, a lot of changes happened to the district. We went to, I believe, 3 superintendents during that time. And what I'm most proud of is the fact that we were able, and at that time, it's ironic again that we talk about, this is when the desegregation case came to the forefront. So a lot of the work that I did in child welfare and attendance dealt with the desegregation case. Not only that, there's a lot of confidential stuff that goes on when you're dealing with students and parents as well, adults, teachers in particular as well too. So we implemented the Positive Behavior Center, which you graciously piloted for a half a school year. Because of its success, we continued it, and it's still in operation today, and that has significantly helped to reduce the number of out-of-school suspensions that we have for students. While it's not a catch-all, it doesn't prevent everything from happening. I do agree that it's some success because students are best serving our district when they're in the school. After 9 years, Mr. Al, the superintendent, recommended that I become the compliance officer because there was a lot of issues with making sure that everything that was required for this particular case was submitted in a timely fashion. When I was supervisor of child welfare and attendance, I only dealt with the discipline aspect of it and those reports with the student transfers. But now it encompasses all of it. As you can understand from the last trial that we had, despite us not coming to formal agreements at that particular time, I think I put my best foot forward during the trial and questioning. And if you recall from the last trial, the judge really had her way with us, but this time I think I answered the questions as I did the last time, truthfully, and hopefully moving forward we can come to some sort of agreement so that we can resolve this case moving forward. I'm not going to talk about human resources because I do attend every job fair as part of the DSAG order. It was required that I attended human resources job fairs because we weren't hiring enough Black employees. So I've attended every job fair, so I'm well aware of the issues and the struggles with hiring employees, no matter what race. So I have a good grip and good understanding of that. As a principal, as well as the supervisor, I've worked with transportation, with maintenance. So I'm well-rounded and well-versed in everything. There's a lot of times that you don't see the things that I do, but I go above and beyond for the district, not because I'm looking for accolades, but it's just, it comes naturally. I was mentioning to someone the other day, a lot of times when most of you are sleeping, the police are at my house at 8, 9 o'clock at night. I'm dealing with a situation that may have happened. The neighbors are saying, what's going on? Don't worry, it's something school related. He has it under control. So those are the things that I do just to make sure that the district remains out of the spotlight for something negative. Over the past 2 days, you've seen we've had 3 bomb threats. One of the issues that I think needs to be addressed with that issue is when someone is arrested, it needs to be publicized, because we've caught some people, but at some points it's not publicized, so that's an issue. But I'll go into that a little bit further. So that's Mr. Wilson in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer the questions that you have for me.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, question number 1. What is your vision for the St. Martin Parish school system and your plans for moving it forward?
My vision is that principals are held accountable, teachers are held accountable, students are held accountable, as well as parents. I think that we've lost the idea of what school should be about, and school should not be designed to be a babysitting service. We're in the profession that creates every other profession. You don't become a doctor unless somebody teaches you to become a doctor. You don't become a lawyer unless somebody teaches you to become a lawyer. So our profession at one time was the most prestigious profession that you could aspire to be. But now we're looked at, we're talked about on Facebook, we're talked about on social media, because parents don't feel that what we're doing is right. So I think that what we need to first do is come to the meeting table with parents, with the community, find out what the community and the parents want, and work together to move the district forward. St. Martin Parish is no different than any other district that is around us, and they're showing success. What are they doing? There's no secret sauce that they're doing. There's nothing different that they're doing. They're working with families, they're bringing families in, and they're meeting with families. A lot of times what I think that we do is we tend to dismiss parents, or we brush the parents off, or because we've had a bad experience with a parent, we don't want to deal with them anymore, and we have to change that mindset. Parents are very leery of school right now because they think that we're out to get them. So we have to kind of change that mindset. So my vision is for central office staff, and I'm going to talk about this at the end, but since you've asked the question, it's for central office staff to work with those schools that are in most need on a weekly basis, because those are the schools that need most of the help. My concern is that we have a lot of new administrators who are struggling because there's no cookie cutter solution for being an administrator. So my vision is to start a leadership academy with those principals who have 1 to 5 years of experience, and to work with those administrators, bringing in experts from the outside to provide them with professional development so that they can be the leaders that we need them to be, and in turn develop teachers that are going to bring the test scores up.
All right, thank you. Any board members have a question? None? Okay. Question number 2. How do you plan to increase academic achievement levels and or school performance scores?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's part of my summary at the end. As I mentioned before, you're gonna see in the presentation, we have 3 schools that are F schools right now, and I think we have 3 schools that are D schools right now. And those schools are impacted by their subgroups. I'm talking about Black or African American students, economically disadvantaged students, English language learning students, and students with disabilities. Those subgroups have impacted our school performance scores at those particular schools. And it's no different than what it was in 07, 08 when I was principal of St. Martinville Junior High. We have got to target those subgroups. And use research-based strategies to pull those subgroups up. The students who are doing well, we're going to give them what they need, but it's the students who are struggling that need to be focused on the most. And those particular schools are the schools that need to be focused on. We have We have schools that are doing great. We can periodically monitor those schools, but the schools that are struggling are the schools that need the most attention. So we need to focus in on those particular schools.
Okay, any board members have a
Yeah.
question?
Explain what you think, is the main job of a superintendent.
I think the main job of a superintendent is to ensure that the schools are run the way they are, that people are responsible and held accountable for what they're supposed to do, and to make sure that the policies and procedures that are set forth by the board are done to the letter of the law. So I don't think that a superintendent should be someone who passes the buck to someone else. My plan is to be in the schools. If you watched the news last night, I didn't realize that I was on the news because of the bomb threat. People were calling me, telling me that my plan is to be in the schools. I can only do so much sitting down. If you're not in the schools, it's just like I've talked about principals. If you're in your office from 8 to 3, you're not going to stop problems on your campus. You have to move around your campus. So as a superintendent, my plan is to be in the schools with the supervisors. It's not going to be, okay, you do this and I sit back and watch it happen, because it's not, you don't attract flies with vinegar. You attract them with honey. Everybody has to pull together.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
A while ago, you talked about subgroups
Yes.
for academic achievement.
Mhm.
How do you plan to do those subgroups?
Well, those subgroups are already created. Those subgroups are subgroups that are defined by the state. You have your Black and African American subgroups. You have your economically disadvantaged subgroups. You have your EL students. A subgroup may be 10 or more students. So those subgroups are already defined, and if they don't score the way the state is expecting them to score, then you receive an F for those subgroups.
Okay.
So when I get into my presentation, I'm going to show you that those subgroups have scored Fs for 2 consecutive years, and that's what caused them to have one of the labels from the state.
So what's your plan to make them,
My plan is to use research-based strategies.
and what would that be?
Well, I can't go into detail about what particular strategy I'm going to use for a particular school, because I haven't met with the school to find out what they're using at this particular time.
So what schools are in trouble?
We have St. Martinville Junior, Burbridge Primary, Burbridge Elementary, Burbridge Junior, Cecilia Junior, Burbridge High. I think it's only for one subgroup. We have Tesh, as well as I believe St. Martinville Primary as well.
So before you became, you would go into the schools, right? As a supervisor?
Yes,
Okay, what school were you going into?
I was assigned to Parks Primary. I was assigned to St. Martinville, Cecilia Junior High at one time.
So how would you direct that principal to help that school?
I would first tell the principal, take a look at where that student scored in the previous year, what their strengths and where their weaknesses were, and then take those weaknesses and focus on those weaknesses and provide support to that student in those particular areas where they're weakest. In the areas.
And what programs would you use for that?
What do you mean, what programs?
Okay, you're saying that you go into the schools, you're telling the principals. So how would you go about doing that? Like, to help that principal? I'm a first-time principal, I don't know anything. How would you help me to bring my scores?
First-time principal, what the state is asking us to do is use tier 1 curriculum.
Okay,
So we use the tier 1 curriculums for each of those particular grade bands, use those tier 1 curriculums and focus just on where those students are very, very weak. And then bring and concentrate just on those areas where they're weak. The areas where they're strongest, we'll provide them with support, but it's the areas where they're very, very weak.
so but what if you have a weak teacher? So what do you do then?
And that's my point. My point is to train the principals so that they are able to support those weak teachers. It's not a matter of getting rid of the teachers because we can't find teachers, but providing those teachers with the support so that they can become stronger.
Any other questions? Okay, question number 3. What strategies would you employ to improve discipline in the classroom and around the campus?
One of the biggest issues that we have is I think that when teachers leave the university, they're not properly trained on how to handle discipline within the classroom. This past weekend, we had 6 to 7 schools who participated in restorative practices, and that's one of the biggest, the key components to changing behavior and working with students who, for some reason or another, are having difficulties within the classroom. I was fortunate enough to be at Parks Middle and Brooklyn High School on Friday and Saturday, and based on my observation, I think that they really enjoyed and understood the processes that it takes. It's not always about being punitive, it's about trying to make children understand the behaviors that they're doing and how they can correct those behaviors without resorting to something that could result in them being suspended out of school. So I think it's, again, using restorative practices, teaching principals how to help their teachers to become effective classroom managers. Because I can remember from my days in school, we took a class on discipline, but that was a brief class that really didn't show you how to become a disciplinarian and how to manage your school. I think that what needs to happen is your weaker teachers, for one, need to visit other classrooms where teachers have structure and where teachers have good classroom management skills. Take a few notes. You don't have to take everything that you've seen in a teacher's classroom and try to replicate it in your classroom. You take 1 or 2 of the things that are working, and then you bring those things into your classroom. Try those out for a few weeks. If those work, then you go back, you may try 1 or 2 more. It's just like placing a child on a behavior plan. You don't try to give a child 7 or 8 or 9 things to accomplish because child's going to be overwhelmed. You start with 1 or 2 things that you give a child to do. If they can accomplish those things, those 2 things, then you move on to something else. So I think it's starting small, but giving them the structure that they need so that they can be effective teachers. As I'm going to talk about in my PowerPoint, if we don't give teachers the ability and the support that they need to teach, then we're never going to be able to sustain what we're doing right now because we're losing teachers at an enormous rate. So they're and it's not to knock teachers, but teachers are more comfortable leaving the system and going and working somewhere else because they don't have the headaches that they're having right now. So it's our jobs to be in those schools, to be able to provide them with the support so that they want to remain in this. We have some very, very good teachers, and we've lost some great teachers because of the lack of understanding or their lack of experience with management. So it's our jobs as supervisors, as central office staff, as administrators, to be able to help them so that they remain on our campus.
Any other questions?
Yes, what is your greatest strength? What is your greatest strength?
I get along with everybody. I'm accessible. If people need me or need to talk to me or want to call me, I'm always available. There's not an administrator in this district or a teacher in this district that'll tell you that I'm not accessible. I'm as accessible as they come. My cell phone, you voicemail, it sends an email to my phone. So I'm very accessible. I try my best to do that. People in the district call me Nervous Ned because I'm always on the go. I'm always running and moving around. It's because I want to make sure that things are done. It's just the way I'm in, just the way I am.
Any other questions? All right, number 3 or 4. What are your plans to strengthen school district and community relations?
Glad you brought that up. One of the first things that I want to do is establish town talks. Maybe at a local coffee shop, maybe at the local McDonald's, some area where, we're going to be given the opportunity to sit down and meet with the community, with parents, grandparents, business leaders, civic leaders, and talk about where our schools are, what they envision for our schools, and what do they see that could help to improve our schools. We could sit here as school employees and as board members and make all the decisions that we want. If we don't get the input from the public, then we're never going to see success. because our job is to provide them with what they want. We've learned this over some time that providing people with what they want is going to ensure that we have success. So that's part of my plan.
All right. Board, any questions?
How can you help principals that have a school with many discipline problems? That's what's going on right now.
And that's part of what I talked about when I said we're gonna have a leadership cohort or a leadership model. Is bringing those administrators in so that they're gonna learn how to manage time, manage their schools, and manage what's going on in their class, on their campuses. Sometimes you walk onto a campus and principals are running all over the place. You may walk onto a campus and you can't find the principal because they're running, trying to put out fires. And it's all about management and finding people who can support what you're doing. The principal, whether it's a male or female, can't do it by themselves. They have to have a support staff to be able to help. And I think a lot of times what happens is principals are leery in trusting other people, and they want to do everything by themselves. And that's why we have a lot of administrators that eventually get burned out. It's because they don't want to provide the people that are under them with the support they need so that they can do the job when they leave. When Ms. Frederick left, she knew she could count on me to run the school because she had provided me with the support that I needed to be able to run the school. And that's how it should be. Communication between administrators. Administrators need to communicate. You only solve problems by communicating. When I was a principal, every afternoon, me and my assistant principal sat down and met. We ran down what happened during the day. So that in the morning, we knew exactly where we needed to be, what needed to be done, and there were no issues. Now, I'm not gonna say it was utopia, it was perfect. We had issues, we had problems, but we knew how to deal with the problems. And I think too many times, we try to put Band-Aids on the issues that we have instead of addressing it. If you're having a problem with a student, call the parent, have the parent come in for a meeting. I think a lot of times, we're too afraid to have parents come in because we think that it's going to explode or it's gonna be a bad situation. You have to have them come to the table so that you can explain to them what's happening. We're losing our kids to the streets. We're losing our kids to the street because we don't want to have these parents come in. So that's my philosophy and my idea about it.
Okay, you said like the supervisors go to help the principals, right? But what if that supervisor has never been a principal? How do you feel about that? How can that person help that person?
I don't feel that a supervisor has to have been a principal to be able to help a principal become an effective principal. I believe that you can look at what's going on objectively and provide them with some key points that'll help them. It doesn't necessarily mean because you were a principal that you're going to be an effective supervisor. You could, and I use the example I'm going to use may sound harsh, but it's true. There are some paraprofessionals or some substitute teachers who do a great job at teaching and don't have a teaching degree, have full command of a classroom, and you hear a pin drop in those classrooms. And it's not to knock people who have the degree, but some people are born with it and some people are not. But it doesn't necessarily mean because you've never been a principal that you don't know how to help a principal become effective. So I don't know how to fix a car, but I can give you some pointers on what to do so that it doesn't break, like change your oil periodically and things of that nature. So I don't know if necessarily having or going through all the positions is something that's needed to per se be effective at what you do. I think if you put in the work and you work hard enough, then you can be successful in anything that you do. You know, my career was never, at the time, not to be a teacher. I wanted to be an attorney, but for things that happened family-wise, I decided I wanted to be a teacher, and guess what? I think it was the best decision I made because I made a big difference in a lot of lives of a lot of kids.
Any other questions? All right, next question.
What are your thoughts on magnet schools, and what would you propose for our district?
I visited several magnet schools, went to magnet schools conference. I think that it's a good concept. I think that it's a great idea. I think it's something that's needed. I think it's something that members of our community want. But the key is going to be to providing those people with the opportunity to give us input as to what it should look like and how it should be implemented. If we implement the magnet program the way the community wants the program to be done, then we're gonna see success. But we have to give them the opportunity to provide us input. If we just sit there and we make all the decisions and then say, okay, here, this is it, you take it, whether you like it or not, this is what we're gonna put into place, then it's gonna flop. So we have to give them an opportunity to provide us with their ideas about it. And not only that too, what I think needs to happen is at the end of every year, there has to be 2 to 3 evaluations that's done. One by the teachers that are part of that magnet program, 2 by the community that are part of that magnet program, and 3, the students that are part of that magnet program have to give you feedback and evaluate the program so that if there are changes that need to be made, then those changes can be made. We can't just say, oh, wow, this looks like it's working. Let's keep doing it the way it's been done. We have to be able to get some feedback so that we know exactly what tweaks we need to make moving forward.
Question by the board?
And to your point, I'm glad you brought that up. One last point. Prior to me walking here, I received an email from the research company that you so graciously hired. The Magnet Schools of America grant opportunity has opened up yesterday, and we have a Zoom scheduled meeting for next week. She said it's $15 million over 5 years that we're going to apply for. So just so that you know. So with $15 million, we can do whatever type of magnet we want. If we want to bring in music, arts, everything, if we secure this grant, then we'll be able to do whatever we want.
Any questions for the board? All right, question number 6.
What are your thoughts and plans to involve more teachers in our district's classrooms? And will those plans include the limiting of the number of supervisors?
I'm glad you brought that point up. That's part of my presentation is there needs to be a restructuring of central office. I'm going to go into more detail when I get into my PowerPoint. We need to restructure central office. We need to find out if the people that we have in positions, if they're doing their jobs effectively, and if we're as a district getting the best bang for our buck with those people in those particular positions. So it's going to take a reevaluating of all of those positions to determine whether or not we need to keep all of those positions that we have. So it doesn't hurt to take a look at it because I think that it's vitally important. And I hate to do this, but I'll use Lafayette Parish as an example with administrators. Administrators don't get comfortable in the schools that they're in because at any given time they could be moved to another school. I think part of what we do is we allow an administrator to get into a particular school and they become comfortable there and they can stay there for 10, 15 years and we don't see any progression, any progress with that particular administrator, but they're still at the school. So I think if we hold their feet to the fire and say, look, you either do X, Y, and Z, or we're gonna move you to another school or put you in another position. I think those things need to happen because we have to hold them accountable. We have to hold them accountable. I, as a member of this school district, person who lives in this school district, I'm tired of seeing all the neighboring districts with school performance scores that are better than ours, and their children are no different than our kids. The same kids that are going to the neighboring parishes are the same students that we have. They're no different. They're no different. So it's time that we, as a district, change our process and what we're doing so that we could, so when the newspaper talks about St. Martin Parish, they're not talking about St. Martin Parish as the bottom of the Acadiana area. So, or other districts are not comparing themselves to us by saying, we grew this much and St. Martin Parish dropped to this. Because they do it. They use us as a stepping stone. So that's where we need to change that.
Okay, board members, any questions?
Okay, Fred, name 5 things that describe you.
Dedicated, loyal, passionate, hardworking, and very, very likable. I don't think that you're gonna find anybody, now you may find 1 or 2 people, but I mean, I don't think that you're gonna find people that say on any campus, that say, oh, I don't like Mr. Wills, or I don't like what Mr. Wills does, or I don't like Mr. Wills' work ethic. It's not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. And I hate to use it, but I'm gonna say, nobody works harder than I do. Nobody works harder than I do. And I stand on that. Nobody works harder than I do. Nobody.
So you're gonna be very dedicated. Make sure I was going through.
I promise you that I'm gonna work as hard as I've worked over the last 26 and a half years. I told the last 3 superintendents, my job is to keep St. Martin Parish out of the newspaper. That was my job. There's not a principal, there's not an assistant principal that could tell you if they call with an issue that I don't answer. I don't care what time of the day, what time of the night. If they email, I respond. That's how accessible I am. So,
Any other questions?
Proceed.
Anything else? Okay, proceed with your closing.
all right. So my vision for moving St. Martin Parish forward. So district priorities. Number 1, district and school staff will prioritize learning by filling achievement gaps and setting high expectations that will improve St. Martin Parish Schools' academic performance at all levels and underpin students' attainment or transcendence of annual academic expectations. That means we're going to provide support to students and then push them beyond what they're expected to do. That's not just for a particular group of students, that's for all students. You often hear that this particular school in this particular zone gets all of the money, gets all of the X, Y, and Z. That's not what's happening. Those teachers are rolling up their sleeves and doing what needs to be done at that particular school. So that needs to be replicated at every school in the district. St. Martin Parish Schools will diligently work to ensure safe environments for students and staff. I don't know if any of you get the newsletter from the LDOE, but on Thursday afternoon, the state superintendent said there's $21 million that's going to be allocated in grant funding to schools to shore up and secure their buildings. That means we could use that money because we're going to be on that, me and my staff, we're going to be on that Zoom call on Thursday afternoon to metal detectors, Ms. Vito, to ask for metal detectors. We're going to get metal detectors with that. I know that you have, I know that you have cameras. I know that you talked about Cecilia High School with their secure area, and I know that you already sent out for bids for that, but we're still getting money that could be used to shore up other schools, fencing that's needed at Burbridge High School. All of that is that can be used for that. There's $21 million that they're giving to districts. So LEAs will be able to apply for that, and I can tell you that we are going to apply for some of that money. So central office staff and school administrators will collaborate to foster the retainment and re-enrollment of students. We're losing too many students to virtual charter schools, and I'm not knocking virtual schools, I'm not knocking charter schools. We have some great things to offer, and we need to promote what we have to offer to bring those children back into our schools. Staff will work with private plaintiffs in the U.S. government to resolve longstanding desegregation issues. I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired of dealing with this desegregation case. It's time for us to get to the end of it. We spent a lot of money which could be used to improve schools, to support teachers, and to support students. We've wasted a lot of money in this desegregation case through no fault of our own, even though we tried to get out of it. You know the issues that we're dealing with. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole tonight. On the first 100 days of my administration, listen and learn. What do our people say? As I talked about earlier, we're going to hold informational sessions, town talks, so that the community can provide input on what they want to see within our schools and what improvements could be made. Analyze the district academic performance. What does our data say? We will begin looking at data from early childhood. There are gaps in learning from lower levels to upper levels. And oftentimes the low expectations of the student population is in students that are leaving the lower grades and they're performing below grade level. And then it increases as they move on because we haven't closed the gap early enough. We will also focus in on our data for our special education students, our English language proficient students, and our other subgroups that are affecting our student performance score. As I mentioned, somebody asked a question about our organizational chart. What do our positions say? Consider the influence of our current positions. How does each position support the district progression? Restructure the organizational chart so that our district priorities are strategically and intentionally focused. Are the right people in the right positions? Do they demonstrate the knowledge, the drive, and the work ethic needed to meet the district goal? And if they don't, guess what? They need to go. It's simple. Review our financial resources. What does our money say? We're in a good place right now financially, but are our finances strategically in place and used? Planning for beyond ESSER. Every district talks about ESSER. What happens when that money runs out? We must plan to streamline our instructional programs to focus only on Tier 1 curricula and Tier 1 supplemental resources. Many of the supports that we have in place are with ESSER funds, and they'll be going after those funds are exhausted. So we got to figure out now what we're going to do when ESSER is no longer here. Audit our physical structures. What do our buildings say? Are our buildings safe? As I mentioned before, the upcoming webinar. Do they encourage a sense of pride in staff and students? Not all schools are equal when you walk onto their campuses. The grounds are not the same. Not all schools are invited. What is the community saying about our schools? District performance. We're at a 68.2, which is a C. Not bad, but it's a C. We grew 1.2 points from our 2021 district performance score. Our results from the 2021 school year reflect that we have F schools, Brobridge Elementary, Brobridge Primary, Brobridge Junior High. And I'm not knocking the administrators if they're in here. This is public information. We had these schools, St. Martinville Junior High, St. Martinville Primary, the Early Learning Center, and Cecilia Junior High. How do we begin to move these schools in a positive direction academically? How do we do that? First, we focus on moving our Black or African American students with disabilities, our economically disadvantaged students, and our English language learner subgroups through the use of research-based strategies. We talked about central office. The attention of our central office staff will be concentrated on working with these underperforming schools on a weekly rotating basis. It's fine to have one supervisor assigned to a school, but that one supervisor can only do so much. We need to go into our struggling schools as a team so that we can focus on every aspect of that school to build that school up, okay? Teams of supervisors will work with the principals who will in turn work with their teachers to develop evidence-based plans to improve student achievement. As a result of this, school administrators and teachers will plan intentionally with a focus on improving achievement for all students. Focus on curriculum progression, as I mentioned, from pre-K to 12th grade, by providing support to school administrators and teachers that will make them aware of their influence on upper grade level performance. Meaning, there's no perfect curriculum. You can't go and buy a curriculum from this state or that state or from this company that's trying to sell you this particular curriculum and say, oh, if I implement this particular curriculum, all of my students are going to be successful. No, you have to use curriculum as a tool to build and embrace strong conceptual foundation in each subject. Many gaps are due to unawareness of the importance of establishing a solid foundation. District staff should support schools by providing professional development that focuses on an understanding of what mastery of the standards looks like, know what to look for in student work, specifically what's causing misconceptions, not just correct answers, right or wrong or responses. Intentional planning to ensure that students are equipped with the learning tools to meet the expectation. We could talk about, oh, well, I've gone over all of the work, I've gone over, and the child still didn't successfully pass the test because you're not intentionally making sure that the child understands what's needed to successfully pass the test. Okay. Use data to drive instruction and interventions. Don't just tell them about the data. We used to have deep data dives during the summer with administrators about their previous year's test score so that they know where their children are before school even starts. Tighten procedures for identifying students' academic needs. I mentioned this, we will close instructional gaps for Black students, students in special ed, and students who are English language learners by making evidence-based instructional decisions. I'm on time.
You good?
Okay. Empower teachers to create teacher-owned analysis, provide evidence-based feedback, and analyze student mastery of grade level standards to increase student performance. Too often times, and I can remember this as an educator, you had a book, you had a workbook, and you had a test book. And guess what teachers would do? Take the test that was already created, pull it out, make a photocopy and give it to the kids. Here, take this. Teacher made so that you know what you've taught your children, so that you understand that they've mastered what you've taught and not just what's in the book that's already been created. I mentioned about supporting administrators, especially those that are with 1 to 5 years of experience, by implementing a school leadership model and a training series. The focus will be on providing these individuals with targeted training in the leadership process. This will allow them to provide better support to the schools in which they operate. Our comprehensive intervention required schools are BBE, BBP, CGH, and SMJH. UIR for academics, SMJ, SMP, CGH, BBE, BBJ. And those that are highlighted in green because they're already using the NIET process, the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching process. As I mentioned, each school listed above has one or more subgroups with a failing grade. To remove the label, a school must not earn an F for 2 consecutive years, much as what I had to do in 07, 08 at St. Martinville Junior High. School safety. Over the past few years, there has been an increase in drug, vape use, and weapons possession among our students. Thankfully, we haven't had a direct incident with a student in possession of a gun on campus. Within the first 2 months, my plan is to meet with all local chiefs of police, the mayors, and the sheriff to strategize ways to combat these issues. The use of mock drills to ensure that schools and local law enforcement are prepared in the event of an active shooter or natural disaster. Work with the sheriff to develop a plan of action to bring school resource officers to our middle school campuses. They are so badly needed. And develop public service announcements which utilize students and staff to send positive message to our students and community. Continue to provide teachers with professional development sessions on diversity and cultural awareness so that they are equipped to handle the students of today. Teachers need to be supported and given the opportunity to teach. That's very, very important. I look at our enrollment trends. Over the past 7 years, St. Martin Parish has seen a steady decline in enrollment from 16-17 to 22-23 drop. We have to find new ways of encouraging parents to keep their kids in the public system. Talk about beginning an enrollment campaign in each area of the district to highlight what each school has to offer. Hold re-enrollment sessions in each zone for students who are in charter or virtual schools to encourage them to return to the parish, and have the schools to create a short PSA to highlight what each school has to offer. I already have somebody in mind who has a drone who could do a short snippet of what the school has to offer, and the school that plays it on their website to encourage parents to come back and re-enroll within our district. Transportation. No, that's a touchy issue. Prior to the start of the 23-24 school year, the Transportation Committee will meet to address the following: the use of the buddy system and how to make this process easier for schools. There have been too many incidents of students being dropped off at the wrong locations and parents sometimes waiting hours for their students to be dropped off. the urgent need to use a computer-based routing system to make the bus routes more efficient. And some routes may have to be consolidated or eliminated in that process. We have some drivers who are driving for 30 minutes and then they're done. So that's a process we need to be able we need to make this more efficient so that we're gonna save on the repairs that are needed for buses, the gas that is being used, and the time wasted by bus drivers. I have no knock on bus drivers, but I just think that we need to have a computer-based routing system which is going to make our district more efficient. Work with the transportation department to host a bus driver recruitment session at the school board office to hire drivers due to the shortage. Advertise within our local newspaper, social media platforms, and the television stations to inform those who might be interested. And last but certainly not least, the district team will continue to work with our council to develop agreements which are feasible to eventually bring this long-standing case to an end. Ensure that staff members understand their roles and responsibilities. I cannot stress this enough. All staff members need to understand their roles and responsibilities. I'm not knocking custodians, but sometimes if I'm visiting the school, I see custodians on break, and I mean they breaking. Everyone needs to be held accountable. We must work as a team. There's no I in team. Seek ongoing feedback from the community about their concerns and implement programs that are highly recommended by the parents in the community to ensure success, to your point about the magnet schools. And work with our desegregation experts to develop the best plan or plans to bring our schools within compliance. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, the board is gonna recess into executive session.
You need a motion and a second.
Okay, and then, well, I just want to explain. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and, with the executive session, we can discuss both applicants, and then we'll make a decision whether or not we'll make that decision tonight or at our meeting. And then we'll come out and let you know which one we've chosen and what we're gonna do. Okay, I need a motion to go to executive session. Motion by Mr. Clay, second by Mr. Fugely. Let's go into executive session. Okay, I was now entertain a motion to come out of the executive session. We have a motion by Mr. Clay, second by Mr. Poche. All in favor? Out of executive session. All right, procedure is gonna be, each board member is getting a ballot. We're gonna go ahead and vote on the ballot, and then the ballots will be counted by Mr. Boyer. With, Ms. Wendy, you're gonna help Mr. Boyer make sure he's counting right? Okay.
Wait, is that a secret ballot?
No,
Those will be read aloud at the end.
you will be read out by Mr. Boyer.
I wish they would.
What?
Like I remember. Voting the open.
Election, we have 2 votes.
You can only vote once.
Yeah, you only go, you never have. Okay.
I have one brand new.
I wish I could.
Quiet, please. He's gonna read out the name.
Okay, first vote, District 1, Steve Fugile, Mr. Fred Wilkes. District 3, Ms. Edna Johnson, Dr. Shirley Thibodeau. District 2, Ms. Wanda Vital, Dr. Shirley Thibodeau. District 4, Jimmy Durio, Mr. Frederick Wilkes. District 7, Mr. Richard Poche, Dr. Shirley Thibodeau. District 5, Mr. Russell Foti, Mr. Frederick Wilkes. District 6, Michael Clay, Mr. Frederick Wilkes. District 8, Mr. Frederick Stelly, Mr. Frederick Wilkes. District 9, Marlon Dojero, Mr. Frederick Wilkes. And District 10, Mark Abear, Mr. Frederick Wilkes. So by my count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favor of Mr. Wilkes, 3 in favor of Dr. Shirley Thibodeau. Is that correct? That's the vote.
Okay, so Mr. Wilkes, you will be the new superintendent.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Pucci, second by Mr. Marty Bear. All in favor?
Frederick. Congratulations.